And we're back with Peter Beinart from the Council on Foreign Relations and CNN political analyst Buchanan, all the way from D.C. Now, I watched President Bush's last press conference Sunday, and I wanted to feel bad for him, like, cause you get this kind of, you know, the nostalgia kind of feeling, and halfway into it, I went, he just seems so petulant and arrogant. It was hard for me to feel bad for him. He really doesn't seem to understand that he. Let me show you a soundbite so we can see. It just.
I believe the phrase "burdens of the office" is overstated. Yeah, it's kind of like, why me? Oh, the burdens, you know. Why did the financial collapse have to happen on my watch? It's just pathetic, isn't it? Self-pity. And I don't believe President-elect Obama will be full of self-pity.
I just don't like how he came off. I think I wanted to feel something redeeming about it, but it was like, get out of here. Like, it's hard to like him. It really is.
He also,
It really is.
you notice what he said. The financial collapse happened on my watch, like it was a tornado or an earthquake. No, it partly happened because a $50 trillion financial industry developed that his government decided not to regulate. And then it went poof. So it didn't just happen on his watch. He bears some responsibility.
But Democrats bear responsibility for that.
Absolutely, they bear responsibility. If you look at his appointments to the SEC and the other regulatory commissions, these were people, a lot of them put in specifically not to regulate what was going on Wall Street. And so, you know, a guy who talked about the responsibility era when he came into office is not taking a lot of responsibility as far as I can tell.
Do you think that is going to be a problem with Republicans going on, Bay, that they're going to still have to deal with some level of the Bush legacy?
No question. And even amongst our own, we really feel that the Republicans came in and promised great things, and we really expected them at least to fight for the principles that the party stood for, that we really, the core of what we value. And we feel that the Republican Congress and the Republican president didn't do that. And so we're much more cautious about who our leaders are, listening to, will they really have that kind of backbone to really battle for those things that are so important for the country. And of course, the American people, 90% thought we went in the wrong direction. They blamed the people in power at the time, and that's Republicans. So all of that falls on our shoulders, and we have to take responsibility for it, one way or the other.
Now, you said you're going to basically listen to your leaders and make sure that they kind of fit the bill for the agenda you want to forward, right? That was, but Kenneth Blackwell, who is vying for the position of RNC chairman, made this statement, and I couldn't believe it. And he was talking about homosexuality. He said, I've never had to make the choice because I've never had the urge to be other than a heterosexual. But if, in fact, I had the urge to be something else, I could have, in fact, suppressed that urge. The fact is, you can choose to restrain from that compulsion. And I think, in fact, you don't have to give into the compulsion to be a homosexual. Which means, that is the gayest thing I've ever heard in my life, first off. Because I don't know how you suppress an urge you don't have, but okay. But I made the point to make this point, that he is vying for the leadership role of the Republican Party. He's one of the 6 that is being seriously considered to be the voice of the Republican Party, and yet he espouses stuff like this, and I think it's going to be hard to connect with everyday Americans when you say stuff like that.
No, you know, this is the key. In Hollywood, in the national media, with the establishment here in Washington, people think that this is an issue, or the culture war issues, all of them, whether it be abortion, immigration, whether it be the marriage issue, that this is not important to middle America, that these are issues that are just divisive, and they are wrong. This goes to the heart of the issues in so many lives in this country. They truly believe that the culture is who we are. It's our identity, and we must fight for it. And so I have nothing but respect for Ken and what he said, and I think it will resonate with millions of Americans, maybe not on the left. I don't expect it to, but somebody should represent our side, and they haven't.
Somebody did represent your side for 8 years. Somebody really did represent your side for 8 years. And honestly, I'm not trying to be facetious, but this last election was a referendum on the way they saw his judgment, the way that they saw him parsing out his judgment. And I think that I made that point to make this one, that the only way the Republican Party is going to ever continue to be viable is if it lets go of these ideas that are so divisive. I mean, I can understand him having a problem. I can understand him saying something that he believes. But if you are a leadership role, you're in a leadership role, when you say it, they believe everybody means it. And that's how America's going to look at this.
You know, Dio, just think of what you just said, that we have to let go of these divisive issues. Well, these issues are divisive because the left or the media or someone other than us have said, you shouldn't say that, it's divisive. Well, that's something that you've reacted to. You decided you didn't like it, so now I can't talk about it. That's what's ridiculous. What is great about this country is we can have people on both sides who are passionate and disagree and walk away as friends. We're allowed to speak those things that are important to us and speak it with great passion and try to move the country in that direction. And for one side just to say, you guys, be quiet, you can't talk about that, or we're going to call you divisive, is absurd. It's called political intimidation, and we've responded to it too long, and it's time our leaders start opening their mouths and speaking loud and boldly again.
Look, Bay and Kenneth Blackwell have every right to say what they want to say, but My America is the story of a country that becomes more and more equal over time and more free over time. You break down barriers to groups that historically have been disenfranchised. That's what we're seeing today. And I think for gays and lesbians, that is in many ways the next final frontier. We are not there yet. It is still perfectly acceptable to say, for people who want to be head of the Republican National Committee, basically, you can't live the way you want to live, even though it doesn't hurt anybody else. You cannot be a first-class citizen in the United States today. What we know in American history is when you give people first-class citizenship, what you get back in return is more than you can ever imagine. That's basically been the strength of this country, and I think Bay is on the wrong side of history.
Well, Bay, I will agree with you this, that we do have leaders, like I, for one, have a huge problem with the Democratic Senate Majority Leader Harry Reid. I do. I think that he has a tendency, like he is almost everything I've come to dislike about members of the Democratic Party, where he's so wishy-washy and he'll say one thing and do another. And I want to shout at the TV, have some balls and say what you mean. The one thing, even though I agree vehemently with a lot of Republicans say, they speak at least the courage of their convictions, and I think Democrats have a tendency to try to be all things to all people, and I particularly find that to be true with Harry Reid.
Well, let me put in a word for Harry Reid. Harry Reid stopped Bush's Social Security privatization plan in 2005.
That's probably the only thing he stopped.
That was a big, big deal. Think about this.
No, but that was
think about it. Imagine if we had privatized Social Security before this financial collapse. Imagine what it would mean for average people, not just that their 401ks, but that their Social Security was down 40%. Okay. Harry Reid stopped that cold. He was very smart tactically about it. I think it was actually the end of the Bush presidency.
I disagree. I do think that he stopped it, but he stopped it because he had the wind of the American people at his back. Americans were opposed to that, so he championed the cause. He didn't fight at a time. If he'd have had that same passion when we were going to war, if he'd have spoke to his convictions then, I think if you believe something, you should believe it whether a poll tells you to believe it or not. Exactly. And that war didn't have to happen if Democrats would have stood up and said, hey, man, I don't care what the country thinks or what the polls say, this is wrong and we're not going forward. And I think as the leader of the party, he has to bear some responsibility for that.
Yeah, DL, you are absolutely right. I agree with you on both sides. Democrats and
Wait a minute. But that's both of them. I mean, I've seen that.
I agree with you entirely. You know, there's something that what the American people really respond to, whether they agree with you or not. They respect leadership. They respect guts. They respect people who truly believe something and are willing to stand up and say it and let the people say, here it is. You may not agree with me, but here's what I believe in. Vote for me or don't vote for me. But we don't have that anymore. We have pollsters who really decide what our party leaders do. And they bring in the polls, and here's how you say it in order to sell it. And I'm worried that Barack Obama has fallen into that category, to be quite honest. What? He sent a stimulus package up to the hill, $700 billion. And one day they said, we don't like this. And he says, oh, if you don't like that, try something else, whatever you want. Well, why did he send it up there if he didn't think it was something that really needed to be done?
Well, you're right. May I have to agree with you on some of those things. We don't have leadership, but we will in about 4 days. So, thank you. Peter Beinart, Buchanan. We'll be right back.